part of the journey home is, yes, waking up to I am safe, I am loved, I am empowered in God. And then starting to learn our own nervous systems, starting to get more comfortable in our own skin, starting to notice. Once you notice, you can name. Once you name, then you have agency.
I'm Trisha Taylor, and this is the Leader's Journey podcast. So this pod is going to stand alone. You're going to listen to it. You're going to love it. It's going to stand on its own 2 feet. But I want you to know it's also in a series. And so we are talking these days about guiding principles, and not just in general. Actually, we did that podcast where we talked about guiding principles in general. What are they? How do you know what yours are? Can you choose some for yourself, and so forth? And we did a podcast on that, and we're going to put the link to that in the show notes. But what we're doing here is looking at some specific guiding principles that we're just putting out there and asking ourselves and our readers, just try these on, see how they work for you. Is there anything here that you want to hold on to? And so this is our simple but complex leadership principle here for this series is guiding principles are those bright stars that help us navigate our lives. They are our deeply held values, our fundamental commitments. And this is important that we reach for when the togetherness forces are strong and threaten to pull us away from who we want to be. That's what our guiding principles are. That was a mouthful, but I will say that on each of these pods in this series. We are also going to be doing a Zoom dialogue on September 16th at 11 Central, where Jim Harrington and I will be just sitting down to talk with you. A Zoom dialogue is not a webinar. It's a dialogue about what our guiding principles are and how we align our lives with them. So you can go onto the website, find the registration link, and get in on that. Okay. The best part of this series is that we are talking with real people who embody each of these guiding principles in their own life and have spent a lot of time thinking about them and living them out. And today, I'm really excited for us to be able to talk about resilience with my friend Rusty. Rusty, thank you so much for being here. It's McKie, is that right?
It looks
No,
like
it
McKie, but
looks
it's
like McKie.
pronounced Mackie. So
Mackie.
this
It's
is what I
always
live with.
when I think it isn't. Like I think I was on Mackie at one time, and then I shifted to McKie. I want to say some things about you though
Uh-huh.
before we jump in, because I want our listeners to know you are a trained spiritual director
Mhm.
and a spiritual formation coach, but also trained as a somatic coach, which
Yes.
I think we're going to, I want to hear more about that. You are the founder of Steadfast Ministries, where you help leaders survive and thrive in ministry, which is, of course, what we're about, which is why it's
Yes.
fun to go on each other's podcasts. We've been on yours,
Yes.
um, uh, which has the name of The Art of Stability. Is that
Mhm.
right?
That is
Which
correct.
is also the name of your newest book,
Yes.
The Art of Stability, How Staying Present Changes Everything. And you're doing this whole new thing called Man School, which you're going to tell us about
Yes.
later.
Yes.
Lots of fun things here. Okay, we were talking about books, and you just said something to me about books being like sending a kid to college, and I wish you would say that again.
I have not sent one of my 3 children to college yet, but as I imagine myself in that situation, I can imagine, and from talking with other friends, that writing a book is kind of like sending a kid off to college. You pour all of your blood, your sweat, your tears into it, and then you send it off into the world and you say, I hope you make something of
Yeah.
yourself. And you rarely hear from the book, but every
Uh-huh.
once in a while you're like, hey, give me a call. And every once in a while you get an email or someone reaching out or saying, oh, your book meant so much to me. And you're like, oh, that's great. I'm so glad
Yeah.
it's making a life for itself.
Because it really does, right? It's out there walking around without us. And I
Yes.
just loved that image. I also really appreciated your book. It is it's a
Mm,
slim book.
hmm Yep.
It is
On
packed.
purpose.
Like I've read it twice now. It is
Oh, thank you.
packed with just like every single section. I go, wow, there is so much here. This could be a whole book. And
Uh-huh.
then, and then we pick up a new idea and the same kind of thing. But you go deep in this
Mm,
stuff. And I really appreciate that. You
mm.
start the book with a story about your house being hit by a tornado
Yeah.
and actually experiencing that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you use that to say um, that there are times when things, they don't just feel unstable, the things you thought you could rely on
Mhm.
drop out from under your feet.
Yes.
I'm just going to say that and turn it over to you. So, what are the examples of that in leadership that you're seeing? Yeah. What are you noticing about that?
Absolutely. I'm sure you can resonate as an author. There was a moment when I was writing the introduction where I relay that story from my childhood of actually not one, but two tornadoes hitting my
Yes.
family's home in one night. And as I'm writing and I wrapped up the chapter, I wrote one sentence that, you know, for most of writing, you're like, I don't have any clue if any of this is good. But every once in a while, you get one line and you're like, that's good.
I was like, yes,
And you feel
exactly.
really proud of it. And the one sentence at the end of the introduction is, where do you go when the safe places die?
Whoa. Yeah.
And when I wrote that, I was like, yep, yep, that's it. That is it. We have all experienced that in some way or another. And so that really is how the book gets set up, is that we all have these moments of instability. They
Yeah.
can be leadership instability, where you have your metrics of success, and then all of a sudden the conflict comes in. And no matter how hard you work, no matter how much, if we can use Andy Colbert's language, no matter how much we white knuckle our
Yeah.
way through, we cannot break through that wall. And the foundation falls out, or possibly it's relational peace or relational success, however you would define that. And now all of a sudden we find ourselves not being able to connect with the individuals we want to, or maybe not even having the healthy relationships in our own home
Yeah.
that we want. It can be physical fitness. It can be, I've got this way of being where I am healthy, and then all of a sudden the health crisis comes. It can be a theological crisis, right? If I've built
Yeah.
my life on these ideas,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden
Yeah.
my world is turned upside down. So we have all had those moments where we've made our home in something, and we say, if that's secure, then I'm secure. And then the instability comes, and doesn't it feel like a betrayal?
Yeah.
It feels like a betrayal
Yeah.
from God or others or our own
Yes.
selves. And the book is really putting forward the idea of, hey, what if the instability is not a betrayal, but actually an invitation
Yeah.
of God doing something deeper in our lives?
Yeah. Then it's that invitation. I mean, we have to make that shift to understand the book. That
Yeah.
And I'm just laughing because I sent you,
Mm-hmm.
some ideas about what we might talk about today. And I quoted you on page 8 of your
Uh-huh.
book, where
Yeah,
it
yeah.
says, friend, you were made for a life of instability. And you
Uh-huh.
emailed me back and said, that's not actually what it says. It says, friend, you were not made for a life of instability. And
Yes.
I was like, oh, okay. But let
Uh-huh.
me tell you where my brain went, okay?
Sure.
Especially in terms of thinking about resilience. That um, Brene Brown says we are wired for struggle, right?
Yes.
And I think about this idea that a plane is made for turbulence. And and I think the reason that I got it wrong was because you do a good job setting us up for the idea that just because things are unstable doesn't mean they're bad.
Yes.
And that no one,
Yes.
God is not surprised by the instability, and we don't have to be either.
Yeah.
And so, but it still made me laugh that I got that wrong.
Me too. Me too. And even within that sentence, there's almost this dual reality going on. It's not to say, and I don't say in the book or in my work with people, that you're not going to experience
Right. Uh-huh.
instability. We are followers of Jesus. We are not trying to experience some level of like Zen Buddhism where we're like above the pain of life. You
Right.
look at the life of Jesus, my goodness, he was a man of sorrows, right? Like he incarnated into a world of struggle and ultimately did suffer the ultimate on the cross. So, yes, we will have instability. But what I was getting at there is really that St. Augustine idea of we are made for God
Yeah.
and our souls will be restless until we find our rest in him. So when the instability comes, it's like, oh wow, I was trying to find my home here.
Yeah.
And friend, you are not made for a life of instability. We are all made to make our home in Christ, to take refuge in him. So that's really, I mean, if you want to boil down what the book is about, it is about how do we not just intellectually know about our union with Jesus, but how do we actually have a felt experience along with our intellectual knowing? How do we
Yeah.
bring those together to experience, oh, my life might be falling apart, but I am in Christ. And so that means I'm in the safest place in the world.
And that's the resilience piece. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you use the word presence, that being able to stay present to what is
Mm-hmm.
stable
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
is the resilience in the instability.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
but I think you put your finger on something. I know you do in the book, on something really important, that the instability, while we're not saying that there is something wrong there, it's important for me to say, because I don't
Mm-hmm.
want a pilot hitting turbulence and freaking out about that. I want the
Yes.
pilot to understand that
Yes.
I may not understand back in 27C, but I want the
Yeah.
pilot to understand that the plane is built for that. I want leaders to not freak
Absolutely.
out when the instability comes, because it's just part of life.
Yes.
But Sam,
You're making me think of one of the Peters. I can't remember which Peter it is, in First Peter or Second Peter,
okay.
where Peter talks about don't be surprised by suffering.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And I think that's what you're getting at, that
Yeah.
the leaders I work with, most of them do more harm to themselves
Mm.
by just being surprised that they're suffering. And we
Exactly.
have
That's
we
what
have
I'm
to
getting at.
work
Yes.
through the okay, let's accept the fact that this is just life
Yeah.
in a broken, sinful, fallen world.
Right.
And once we get to that place of acceptance, then we can actually start the work.
And that's the invitation,
And that's the
right?
invitation. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Then, so one of, you were talking about those sentences that you read them and
Yeah.
that you write them and you're like, oh,
Uh,
that's good.
yeah. I
Yeah.
like that one.
Love that feeling. But okay. So here's my nomination for that in your book.
Okay. Okay.
Say that when the instability happens,
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
external instability exposes internal fragility.
Yeah.
And if I'm thinking
Yeah.
fragility is kind of maybe set against resilience,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that intersects so much with what we do at the Leader's Journey, because we want people to look in, um,
Mm-hmm.
and see. Um, yeah, I guess I just want to ask you, what were you thinking when you wrote that? Because there's so much good stuff there. And how
Yeah.
does that take us into those movements of resilience that you write about?
Yeah, it is going right along with what we're talking about, right? That we shouldn't be surprised by moments of instability, as disorienting as they are, right? They are disorienting. We shouldn't be surprised. But I like to think of this in terms of a lot of times we can experience that instability and we can think, oh, that's a declaration. It's a declaration of like, I'm a failure or I'm completely 100% at fault here. It's a declaration of others are to blame. I'm like the victim and they're the problem. It's a declaration. We often think that like God has abandoned me,
Yeah.
that God is not for me.
Right.
It shakes us, right? And so those moments, they're not a declaration, they're actually a revelation.
Yeah.
So it is a moment, if we can shift the way we're seeing it, to realize, oh, this is revealing that maybe I have built my house on sand.
Mm.
And again, God is inviting me to begin to realize, okay, I have related to God, I've related to myself, I've related to others in ways that have worked.
Yeah.
They have worked
Yes.
until now.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And now I'm getting a revelation and an invitation of, oh, maybe I need to shift how I'm relating to God and to myself and
Yeah.
to others. And
Yeah.
so, like you were saying, if we can see that, if we can own that, if we can accept that, then the work can start.
Hmm. And that is the work, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
at least the beginning of the work,
It's the
being
beginning of
willing
the
to
work.
see
Yeah,
that internal fragility
that's right.
and
That's right.
accept the invitation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
you talk about three movements here, and we may not get all the way through all of them because there's also
We
kind
can
of a
try.
fourth,
We can
and
try.
um, I'm really most interested maybe in one and two because
Sure.
that's where we start, right? And then people
Yeah.
can and then you can tell us about three and we can move toward that. But you talk about how the first thing we have to do is leave home. And I
Mm-hmm.
think you're saying we have to be willing to leave those patterns that
Mm-hmm.
you were just talking about that are built on sand. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
we've got to be willing to get out of that house before it crashes um,
Yeah.
to the ground. And so this idea of staying present to our fragility, but
Mm-hmm.
then shifting into compassion, like
Yeah.
self-compassion and
Yeah.
experiencing
Yeah.
the compassion of Jesus. I think that might have been one of my favorite things that you talk about
Mm-hmm.
because we know from the research that self-compassion
Mm-hmm.
and then the ability to experience the compassion of others, including that
Yep.
of God,
Yeah.
is it changes everything.
It sure does.
Yeah. Say
Sure
more about
does.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, when we start to experience those moments of leaving home, which sometimes we choose, but often are forced upon us through instability. If you look at the three movements of leaving home, homebound, homecoming, what I'm really doing there is I'm riffing, as many have throughout church history and writing. I'm riffing off of the prodigal son narrative.
Oh,
And
okay.
the
Yeah.
and so, the son leaves home.
Uh-huh.
Um, he created through his own foolishness some instability, and then
Yeah.
he comes to his senses. He starts the journey home. He's homebound, and then
Yeah.
he's homecoming. He's welcomed home. um, so yeah, that idea of we regularly move away from God in our attention. We regularly shift our focus away from my home is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and we move it to my home is being a successful leader or making a lot of money or, um, you know, doing a lot for the kingdom or all the things that we do, having healthy relationships, all these places where we say, if this can be okay, then I can be okay.
Okay,
So,
stop right there. That's
yeah,
big, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
that's the opposite of
yeah.
resilience. If
Hmm.
this can be okay,
That's
then
right.
I can be okay.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So there's a level to which we need to learn, as the early desert fathers and mothers taught us, some holy indifference.
Mm,
Uh, they would talk with the word apathia, holy indifference, which we get the word apathy from, which we use in a negative sense. They did not use it in a negative sense.
okay.
They used it to say, no, apathia has a sister, and her name is love.
Mm,
And
okay.
so they would talk about apathia, the ability to, that you need to learn how to not care so that you can actually truly care.
Yeah.
So there's a dynamic in all of us where we care so much. We need from people, circumstances, experience, we need
Yeah.
it to fill a need and a void in us. And when we care that much about something, the house is going to crumble at some point. If if it's not okay, I'm not okay.
I
Yeah.
want to go in, I want to keep going into that because many of us, most of us, all of us go
Yeah.
into leadership for that reason, what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yep.
I'm going to be a terrific leader and this
Yeah.
is what I'm going to get back. And that's
Yeah.
what's going to make me okay. People are going to admire me or they're going to love me or they're going to follow me or they're going to affirm me and
Yeah.
then I'm going to be okay.
I think sometimes it's even more subtle than that, Trisha, and I think you would agree with this as well. In my somatic coaching work, I'm often helping, similar to you all, helping folks identify their values.
Yes.
What are your accidental values that have just gotten baked into your embodied
Mhm.
soul throughout your life? And what are the actual values that you want to live by? And I was talking with a leader the other day, and he was talking about how he's really honing in on his like core value. And he's like, I'm realizing this is why I get so frustrated with the people that I work with, because I'm wanting them to embody this value. And it was one of those like Holy Spirit moments where I was just able to quickly respond to him and say, yeah, but that's not their gift to give to you.
Ah.
That's your gift to give to them.
Yeah.
And it just settled on him of like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think a lot of times it's even more subtle in that we have things that we deeply care about, we value, and we want to offer that gift to others, but then it gets mutated into this like, ooh, but I need you to live that out so that I can be okay.
Exactly. And then the
Yeah,
instability comes. If
that's
I
right.
need you to, if I need you to be this way so that I can be okay,
All
and
the
then
time.
you can't be that way or you don't be that way,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah, it's
feel the
frustrating.
ground shift under my feet.
That's right. And so the movement needs to move towards compassion, like you were saying. But I would say that even before compassion, we need to press into lament,
Mm,
which is
right.
something that we often are not good as leaders, as those who have leadership skills. We are often future oriented,
Yeah.
and pain, loss, grief, sadness is the slow you down emotion.
Yeah.
And leaders who like to be moving,
Oh,
they
yeah.
do not like to grieve. But the reality is, your house just crumbled.
Yeah.
Like your world just got shattered. And in the book, I talk about Walter Brueggemann's spirituality of the Psalms, and he has this really helpful paradigm that I kind of incorporated into the work. That in the Psalms, you see these moments of orientation where all is right in the world, with God, with yourself, with others, and the result is praise. They're Psalms of praise, right? And then you regularly see the Psalm 88, the Psalm 13, the Psalms of lament, where disorientation comes. Life starts to fall apart. And I propose in there that when that happens, the first step is lament. We then often experience the silence of God.
Yeah.
And as we can stay present to and sit with the grief, the lament, the loss, and the silence of God, what happens is it shifts into an acceptance and a contentment that then leads to a reorientation. So Psalm 131, I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother, right? I've not preoccupied myself with things too great for me, but I've put my focus on God, right? I've not left home in my attention to God. I've not looked to all these other things I can't control. I have, like Mary, turned my attention to the one thing that's necessary. And as I have, my soul gets reoriented. And then we go back into a new season of orientation where all is right with God, myself, and others. We
Yeah.
praise, we're happy, we're able to truly Sabbath rest. And then, my goodness, new disorientation comes. So this is a cycle
Yeah.
that we live in life. And so, because we always experience it and always will, it just makes it easier if we go with the flow rather than resist the
And
process.
you mean the flow of sorrow or
The flow of
tears. Yeah,
disorientation, the flow of
yeah,
instability, the flow of grief, right?
right.
The
Because
flow of learning the rhythms of
yeah, you
life.
talked about slowing and you said being present to and paying attention to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the pain, the brokenness, the
Yeah.
instability. And I think you're right that maybe it's just unique to human beings, but I think it's more prevalent for leaders. Not only do we not want to do that, we want to stay busy, like you said, we want to
Yep.
stay moving, but the people we're leading expect us to do that. They
That's
want us
exactly
to
right.
come in and bring in the next big thing that's going to fix this. And
Yeah.
to do what you said is
Yeah.
really hard.
We could spend a whole podcast on this one idea, but one of the hardest parts about this whole process is that as God takes us on a disorientation and stability journey, and then he begins to reorient us through that process, we're shifting to relating to God, ourselves, and others in new ways. And one of the hardest parts is the consequences of that.
Yeah.
And I use consequences on purpose, right? We
Yeah.
typically use that as a negative word. There are good consequences of I'm no longer going to relate in the unhealthy ways I used to. And when we do that as a leader, especially if we have a history of relating in the old ways, it takes a lot of wisdom, discernment, and maybe even some coaching to be able to lead people through, hey,
Yeah.
I'm changing the relational script of how I relate to you. And
Yeah.
if there's not some kind of communication and renegotiation in that, whoa, that creates problems. So a lot of leaders will be like, the aftermath of me getting healthy is actually harder
Yeah.
than the instability that got me healthy,
Yes. Yeah.
which is surprising.
And this is that process of you were saying, we get disoriented and then we get reoriented around
Mm-hmm,
new patterns, new
mm-hmm,
insights that lead to new
sure.
practices that lead to new
Mm-hmm,
patterns and so forth.
mm-hmm,
And there's
yeah,
something in us though that like we don't want to be reoriented. We just want to go back to the way things were. And you're
100%.
describing a
Yeah,
process
yeah,
where we get reoriented and on the other side we're different.
yeah.
And now our world, the people in our world
Mm-hmm,
have to deal with someone who's different than we were before.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And maybe that's
yeah.
mostly in that second movement, that idea
Mm-hmm,
that we've seen our internal fragility, we've accepted the invitation, but now we're unlearning those
mm-hmm,
patterns. That's kind of the reorientation. We're unlearning and learning. One of the
mm-hmm.
things that we emphasize at the leader's journey is that that's how adults learn. Children don't have to unlearn, they can just
Yeah.
learn. But
Oh, I love that.
adults have to unlearn in order to learn.
Yeah, that's
And
wise.
um, I loved so you in that section you made up a word called mystophobia, and I diagnosed myself. I think I have this. Uh, I really want to hear from you. Like, what is mystophobia, and
Mm-hmm,
what do we do about it?
mm-hmm. Yeah. So, you're describing this. Okay. So we've realized there's instability. We're disoriented. We started lamenting, and now we're starting the journey home. In the book, I talk about that in terms of learning new ways to relate to God, ourselves, and others. To God, we're waking up to Him through
Yeah.
more contemplative practices,
Oh,
very old, ancient way of essentially being like a Christian mystic. Even that word, that's where kind of mystophobia comes
yeah.
from. And people can be scared with that, especially depending on your church background. But the interesting thing, if you look at Christian mystics throughout history, is they're not tied to a denomination. They are all spread across different traditions, but they're really waking up to the love of God. That's really all a mystic is. They're waking up to their belovedness, and they are like, I want everything in my life to be about love, loving God and
Yeah.
loving others, not for the sake of what they can do for me, but loving them for the sake of God. So
Yeah.
even our love of others goes back to a form of loving God, right? So we're waking up to that. We're also waking up to learning how to be still, slow down, be silent, and listen to the cry of our own soul, which is disorienting in and of itself, especially if you've never done it. And then we're also waking up to building some friendships with others that provide some stability.
Mm.
So having some trustworthy, close friendships. So that's kind of the, the up, the in, and the out of this homebound journey. And then the need there is that every human being needs to feel safe.
Yeah.
They need to feel loved, belong,
Yeah.
and they need to feel empowered.
Mhm.
They need to feel a sense of agency in their life. And so the gospel story just brings this home for us, doesn't it? That my goodness, we are safe with God. We can take refuge in Him. We are loved by God our Father, Jesus our brother, and the Spirit who loved us enough to take up residence in us. And we are empowered, not because we are strong, but because the Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead is in us and is empowering us. Um, so, yeah, as we start this journey home, we have to recognize many of us have heard the idea of like the body keeps the score, the great title of that great book. Um, we need to realize that the body also holds behavior. And
Okay.
so, with somatic work, this is where we can start getting
Mhm.
into these ways of relating to God,
Mhm.
ourselves, and to others. And so, we can start to pay attention and notice okay, when I'm sitting in a meeting with someone who gets really direct, I start to lean forward and tighten my fist, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Or you might be working with a leader and they start learning, oh, when I'm in that same situation, I start to lean back and I
Yeah.
start to dig my heels into the ground.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Yeah.
or every time I'm around a coworker who's anxious, I find my chest getting tight and I find myself rushing in a flurry trying to stop their anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
So
Mhm.
we all have these behaviors that get embodied. And
Yeah.
so part of the journey home is, yes, waking up to I am safe, I am loved, I am empowered in God. And then starting to learn our own nervous systems, starting to get more comfortable in our own skin, starting to notice. Once you notice, you can name.
Yeah.
Once you name, then you have agency. Then you
Okay.
can do something
Then
with
you
it,
can do
right?
something with it. Yeah.
If it's automatic, if it's just like, oh, every time someone's anxious, I get in a flurry and I try to stop their anxiety and it's automatic and I never notice it.
Yeah.
We just keep doing it. But when we notice it, we can name it. When we name it, we have choice. So then we can actually start saying, oh, I want to actually do that differently. Not that we do it
Yeah.
perfectly,
Uh-huh.
but I want to do that differently.
Because we can practice. I mean,
We can
we
practice.
the,
Yeah. Yeah.
this commitment to a reflective life, because everything
Yes.
you've just
Mm-hmm.
talked about
Mm-hmm.
is being willing to be present, to
Yes.
stop long enough to be present to all the realities that you just named,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and to our own bodies.
Yeah.
It seems to me that that reflective life
Mm-hmm.
is what creates much, maybe most of the resilience.
Mm-hmm.
That that's kind of where it's at, and that's what you're saying in the book. And the mystophobia is, that word phobia. I have it. Is
Mm-hmm.
what makes us say, I don't want the reflective life. Just give me a list of things to do, or show me how
That's
to
right.
fix this, or let's just
That's
rebuild
right.
this house right here where it is.
Yeah, let's keep
Um,
working harder. What's the
yeah,
definition of
exactly.
insanity?
Right. And then,
And thank you for bringing me back to the mystophobia. I got off on a tangent
oh
there.
no, no.
Uh, when it comes to how we relate to God, right? So, as I talk about more contemplative styles of prayer, which would include not just kind of your acts, adoration, confession, thanksgiving, supplication, that's a lot of talking to God, which is wonderful. Intercessory prayer is needed in our world. And there's all kinds of traditions that talk about listening prayer
Yeah.
to be able to say, here I am, Lord, your servant's listening, and to grow the discernment muscle. This is the work I do with folks in spiritual direction, to grow the discernment muscle, to hear God speaking and leading us, the gentle whisper of the Spirit. There's styles of prayer of just being with God, where, oh, there's nothing left to say, but I'm just going to sit in this chair and I'm going to experience you here, your presence here. Now, depending on your tradition, you
Mhm.
might be like, whoa, that's that's too new agey, that's too out there, that's too whatever.
Yeah.
That's too subjective. But
Subject. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
as I
right.
point out in the book, like I think that's more driven by fear, mystophobia,
Yeah.
a fear of the mystical, as opposed to actually driven by, again, it's an automatic response. It's not a
Yeah.
choice because intercessory prayer is pretty mystical. To think that I am praying and asking the God of the universe to change my circumstances,
Uh-huh.
that's a pretty wild idea.
Yeah.
But we're comfortable with it. We're used to it, depending on your tradition. The reality of a virgin birth, that's pretty supernatural and mystical.
Yeah.
And yet we're more comfortable with it. So I'm just trying to encourage folks to
Yeah.
take an
I think
assessment.
you're right to name that some of the phobia comes from, our theology
Mm-hmm.
you know, but I think that's just what we point to. I think it's more what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying about this fear of being with ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
slowing down, not pulling a rabbit out of our hat that will impress our congregants or the people that we lead,
Yeah.
but not being productive.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are the things we fear. And what if God really is there when we slow down?
Exactly.
Then what do I do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a Baylor study that essentially pointed out, as surveying all kinds of Christians from all across the spectrum, pointed out essentially 79% of Christians believe, not in their intellectual belief, but in their experiential, felt belief, their image of God, how he shows up with them, that 79% of Christians believe God is either distant, critical, or angry with them.
Yeah.
And
So
so it's like,
why
if
would I want to
that's
slow down and be
why would
still
I
with
want to be
someone like
still?
that? Yeah.
Yeah. But the surprise of the gospel, the surprise of the universe, the surprise of the story, capital S story,
Uh,
is when we slow down, we don't meet an angry, distant, or critical God. We meet a God who is loving and who is compassionate. And that's the joy. I mean, that's the joy of the work of slowing down with people, to see them
yeah.
wake up to who God
Oh, yeah.
actually is. Yeah.
So the art of stability is the name of the book.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these things, if people are wondering, where would I even start to do that? You very gently guide us through that in the book. I just
Mm-hmm.
want to encourage people to take a look at that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so now what are you working on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple things.
Okay.
You mentioned it earlier. The main thing that I'm getting out into the world, just got out into the world, is Man School,
Yeah, school.
which is hopefully a fun name for people. I'm trying to be
Huh?
playful,
Yeah.
but it is a curriculum where dads, it essentially helps dads to raise their boys into men from the ages of 13 to 18. So it's a 5 year rite of passage curriculum. Dads go on, they purchase it, they get a journal for their son, and they get online digital coaching for them
Okay.
for the entire year. So it's essentially like, here is a system, here's a way for you to pour into your son and to help him grow into a more Christ-like man, hopefully avoiding the hypermasculinity that we see in our
Mm,
culture, as well as just more the passive
mm,
masculinity that we see in our
okay.
culture. So that is the biggest thing that I am working on right now.
Yeah.
Folks can learn about that at manschool.co. So that's
Okay.
manschool.co. And
Uh-huh.
then with Steadfast Ministries, I continue to do spiritual direction, somatic coaching, and retreats
Okay.
with leaders, helping them survive and thrive in ministry. And you can find out more there at Steadfast Men. That's MIN
Oh,
for
okay.
ministries,
Uh-huh.
steadfastmen.com.
Okay. Steadfastmin,
Mm-hmm. Yep,
MIN.com.
that's right.
And there's just lots of stuff for people to explore there and to see that
Mm-hmm.
you have to offer. Really grateful for your time today. Thank you. I'm grateful for this book. I'm glad that, it left home and found its way to me. Um,
Thank you, friend.
and think about it walking around out there in the world. As we just wind things up, um,
Hmm.
thank you. There's a lot of depth in what you've said, and people may need to go back over it, but we really want you to think about is resilience and presence in the way that Rusty has described it. um, a guiding principle that I would want to just try on and walk around in for a little while. I don't have to say I'm going to do this till the end of time. I can say, hey, this is something I want to explore, and maybe there's something in this for me. And so just walk around in it. And if you want to let us know how that goes, you can get in touch with us at the Leader's Journey on Facebook or the leadersjourney.us. Keep in mind to our listeners, remember Rusty is a coach and you can get in touch with him. And also, we have a terrific team of coaches at the Leader's Journey. We'd love to hear from you. Um, I personally find coaching to be a way to be present. I'm running 90 miles an hour, but I am preparing for my time with a coach, and then I'm in the coaching, and then I'm reflecting on the coaching, and that's how I can stay present. So just want to invite our listeners, if that's not something that you're into, explore that and let us know how we can help you. And as always, thank you for being with us and take really good care.